Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and today we're going to have another video in the series where we're taking a look at Major League Baseball data from 2022 to answer some questions, see if it follows conventional wisdom or whether it breaks from conventional wisdom. I've done a couple of these kind of runner advancement videos, and today we're going to be taking a look at runners taking that extra base. So, how often on a single with a runner on first does that runner on first go to third as opposed to staying on second? How often does a single score the runner on second base? And how often does a runner on first score on a double, or as opposed to staying on third? These are all things that we're going to take a look at today. Let's take a look. All right, so as always, we have a couple of caveats with this. If you watch my other videos, you know that this is coming. The only thing that we're looking at here is singles to the outfield that there were no errors on the play. So that way we can get a true representation of how often the runner takes that extra base, regardless of errors. Obviously, if there's an error, the runner would take the extra base anyway. But I wanted to see the true representation of how often a runner gets from first to third on a single, for example, based on outfield, which outfielder was the first to field the ball, and that kind of thing. So we're only looking also at outfield singles. I did find it interesting that about just under 15% of singles are infield singles overall in 2022, the data that I looked at. So I was not, I guess that's the first surprising thing. I didn't expect that number to be so high. But 15% is actually, kind of significant number of singles that are infield singles. The other thing is that, so just so you see, I broke it down into less than 2 outs and with 2 outs because I'm sure there's, as we'll see, there's a difference between that in terms of how often the base runner tries to take that extra base. And then you'll notice I broke down in first and second. That's where the runner is. So in the case of first, there's a runner on first or a runner on first and third only. I didn't want cases where there was a runner on first and second because oftentimes the runner on second could block that runner on first from taking the extra base, for example. So if the runner on second only goes to third and stops, then the runner on first really doesn't have a chance to go to third base. So I just eliminated all of those. I may do another video on trail runners where that will come up, so that we can really take a look and dive deep into what happens with the trail runners in these cases. But for now, we're just looking at runners on first or runners on first and third only. That way there's no lead runner to block their advance. And in the cases of second that you see here, it includes any time there's a runner on second base because obviously if there's a single, the runner on second is going to get to third and a runner on third won't block their advance, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what we're looking at here in the upper section. As I said, trail runners we'll cover in a different video. So as in my past videos, you kind of know the format here. What you see here is the runner on first or the runner on second, whether they just took one base on the single or whether they took 2 bases on the single. If they're in cases of a runner on first, 1 base means he stopped at second base. 2 bases means he made it to third. And then, of course, thrown out. How many times was the runner on first thrown out at third base, attempting to take that extra base? Likewise, with the runner on second, 1 base means the runner on second got to third and stopped there. 2 bases means he scored from second base. Thrown out means he got thrown out, usually at home, trying to score. And then, of course, less than 2 out and 2 outs. And then broken down by which fielder was the first to field the ball. Now, the interesting thing there to note is that with the shift, there may be some impact here in terms of which fielder is fielding the ball. I didn't take a look at where the ball was hit because, if you're watching this for tabletop baseball purposes, most games don't distinguish where the ball was hit. They distinguish which fielder is fielding that ball, whether it's a left, center, or right fielder. And that's kind of what things are played off of. So that's kind of what I did here. So you can kind of see the breakdown in terms of the raw numbers. Obviously, there's way more, twice as many, we'll say, or almost twice as many cases of a runner on first with less than two outs as there are with two outs. Likewise, there's maybe 50% more cases of a runner on second with less than two outs as there are with a runner on second and two outs. The breakdown is fairly even in terms of the fielder that's fielding the ball. About 32 to 33%, a third of the time, each of the fielders is fielding those balls. In most cases, a little bit higher for right fielders with a single and a runner on first, with or without two outs. So that's kind of interesting to note. But in any event, what we really want to see is how often the runner takes that extra base. The other thing I guess I'll just throw in there is that there were even a few cases of a runner on first scoring on a single. Very few. There were a handful, but there were a couple instances where a runner on first scored on a single. And my guess is that it could have been due to the shift, maybe. It could have been the runner, it was a hit and run, and the runner was going on the pitch, maybe. But for whatever reason, the runner scored, and the batter only got a single out of it. So I thought that was interesting. So if we look at the runner on first, we can see how often do they get to third. With less than two outs, a great majority of the time, if the ball's hit to left, they're staying on second base, which makes sense because the left fielder is the closest to third base. So almost 87% of the time on a single hit to left with less than two outs, the runner on first is holding at second. 12% of the time, they're getting to third base. And if you'll note, they're almost very rarely is the runner thrown out at third in those cases. Less than 1% of the time is the runner thrown out at third. Not very many times. 11 times all year on balls hit to left. 11 times all year on balls hit to center. 14 times all year on balls, I should say, fielded by the right fielder. So not very often does that. I guess it's 10, 8, and 11 for singles. Sorry, with a runner on first. 10, 8, and 11. So it doesn't happen very often, less than 1%. Now, as we would expect, the percentage of time that the runner on first gets to third goes up as you head further to right field. So center field, whereas left field's 87%, they stay at first. Center field, that drops to 70-30 split, roughly. And balls hit to right fielder, fielded by the right fielder, it's almost a 60-40 split, give or take. So a big difference between whether the ball's hit to left or right, on whether that runner takes takes third base or not, I should say. If we look at with two outs, we can see there's about an 8 to 10% increase in taking that extra base with two outs over less than two outs. So balls hit to left or fielded by the left fielder, the percentage goes from 12 to 20. Balls fielded by the center fielder goes from about 30 to 40. And the right fielder, 38 to 47. So roughly, in that 8 to 10% range of a shift. And again, most of that's probably due to the fact that with two outs, it becomes even more essential that runner get to third base as opposed to hanging at second base. So that's exactly what we would see. As I said, rarely thrown out, even with two outs, rarely thrown out at third. About 1%. It goes up a little bit, probably because the runners are trying to take that extra base more with two outs, but doesn't really go up that much. Now, if we look at runner on second base and whether they stop at third or try to score, what we can see is that the percentages start getting flipped a little bit. So a great majority of the time, the runner was holding at second and not trying to get to third base, regardless of outs. But when they're on second base to start with, over half the time, they're scoring. So balls hit to left, it's very close, almost 50-50, not quite 50-50, just a little bit more of a chance that they're scoring from second on a single than that they're holding at third. Same with right. It's pretty close, 52-46, so pretty close percentage. Goes up a little bit more with balls fielded by the center fielder because center field is further away from home plate, is my guess. So it's a little bit higher, 7 to 9-ish percent higher on balls fielded by the center fielder, the runner on second scoring. And still not very often that they're getting thrown out at the plate. So a single scores a runner on second over half the time, which I thought was interesting. Now, with 2 outs, there is a huge swing when there's a runner on second. So it was an 8 to 10% swing with a runner on first, whether he got to third or not. But when there's a runner on second, there is like a over 30% increase in the number of runners that score from second with 2 outs as opposed to less than 2 outs. If balls are hit to left field, it goes from just over 50% of the time to over 80% of the time. On balls hit to right field, it goes from 52 to 86. And then balls hit to center, it goes from not quite 60% to over 90% of the time. So interesting to see that on a single fielded by the center fielder, well over 90%, 93% of the time, the runner on second base is scoring on those plays. Only not even 5% of the time is that runner holding at third. And again, we do see a little bit of a bump in how often runners are getting thrown out at the plate with 2 out. And again, my guess is that's due to more risk is being taken with 2 outs. So we would expect the number of runners thrown out at home to go up because they're risking scoring more often. They're not holding at at third. So now, rather than a percent or less than 2%, that percentage of runners getting thrown out goes up to almost 7% on balls hit to left, almost 5% on balls hit to right. Balls hit to center stays low, and that again is probably because with center being so far from home plate, the chances are that runner's not getting thrown out anyway. So there aren't very many close plays. So what did that follow what you thought in those cases? I guess the other thing that I found interesting, there were 10 cases on a single with a runner on second where the runner stayed at second, where he didn't advance to third. And my guess is, the 10 isn't very, very much. And so there must be other factors at play in those cases of why the runner did not make to third. Were they balls, they line drive, and it looked like the outfielder might catch it, and they fell in for a hit anyway. So the runner didn't feel like he could risk it. So there's probably other things at play there. Just something to keep in mind. So that's what we see with singles. Let's take a look at doubles. So obviously a little bit fewer instances. The only thing we have to worry about now is a runner on first, because runners on second are scoring on a double anyway. We would expect. So we're just looking at runners on first base now for doubles. So is that runner on first only making it to third on the double, or are they scoring on a double? And we can see that 2/3 of the time, if the ball's hit to left, the runner's holding at third base as opposed to trying to score. So that's 2/3 of the time. Balls hit to center, it's a higher percentage of the time the runner is going to score on a double. 42.5% compared to the almost 32 for left field. And right field's even lower than left. So almost a little over 70% of the time balls hit fielded by the right fielder, the runner's holding at third and not trying to score. I don't know if that's because of again, right fielders tend to have a reputation for having better arms, so they're not being tested as much. This is with 2 outs, or less than 2 outs. So I don't know if that's factoring in. The other thing that I found interesting is that with less than 2 out or with 2 outs, anytime, if we look at the breakdown on where who the fielder is fielding these balls, these doubles, unlike before where it was pretty even split, left, center, and right, now we have a huge percentage of the time where the left fielder is fielding these as opposed to the center or right fielder. Center fielder is the lowest of the outfield positions on doubles with a runner on first at 23% with less than 2 out, about 27% with 2 out. But over 40% of the time, the left fielder is the fielder that is making the play here. And a little less than a third of the time, the right fielder is. And then the center fielder, maybe a quarter of the time, are they doing it. So I found that to be interesting. I don't know if that's, thinking about it, I don't know if that's shift related, because if there's a huge shift with a left-handed batter, the left fielder is shading towards center, and then maybe the ball is being hit down the left field line. There's just more territory there that the left fielder would be covering. And so on a double, we already know that it's probably a ball either down the line or in the gap or something. So I don't know if that's why the left fielder's percentage is so high. I guess it's probably either shift related. That's probably some of it. And then it could also be center fielder's not fielding as many because I don't know if there's just more often to have doubles down the line than in the gaps. I don't know. So it's very interesting. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments on what you think that could be, why the left fielders are fielding such a higher percentage on doubles. But just a couple of my thoughts off the top of my head. So as we can see, with less than 2 out, a majority of the time, the runner is holding at third and not scoring. Of course, that's dependent on which outfield position is fielding the ball. But about 2/3 of the time, with balls hit to left, a little bit more than 2/3 of the time hit to right, they're holding. And then obviously balls hit to center, they're scoring a little bit more, but still less than 50% of the time. Now with 2 outs, much like before, the numbers start flipping. So now we have half the time. Remember, it was only about less than a third before where that runner was scoring from first on a double. Now with 2 outs, we get about half the time that the runner's scoring from first on a double. A little bit more on balls fielded by the right fielder. Goes up to 60% of the time. And then almost 80% of the time on balls fielded by the center fielder is that runner scoring. Once again, rarely is the runner thrown out at the plate. Whether they're less than 2 out or 2 out, it's about the same. It's a little bit higher than, it's a couple percent. Less than 3, but higher than 2. 2 to 3% of the time with less than 2 out. And a little bit higher with 2 out because they're taking more risks probably. But not as high as the singles, scoring on a single from second. Those numbers were higher. And again, my guess is because doubles are either in the gap or down the line. And so there's just probably not as many opportunities to even make a play on a runner trying to score as there are on singles. So that's probably what the difference is. So, as I said, that just kind of gives you an overview of how often runners are taking that extra base. or attempting to. I once again, I'm not looking at trail runners here. So trail runners would probably be something to look at for another video. And so we're only looking at really the lead runners in these cases. I could do a video in the future where I'm taking a look at trail runners, seeing how often they advance based on whether or not there's a play made on the lead runner. I think that'd be interesting to look at too. But if you're playing tabletop baseball games, this definitely gives some food for thought in terms of how often the runner's trying to take that extra base and how often they're staying. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. If it kind of fit your conventional wisdom, I'd say the surprises to me are, I kind of thought there were more cases where that runner was taking the extra base. But really, that's not the case with less than 2 out for sure. With 2 outs, the numbers go up a little bit. But just find that interesting. And didn't exactly fit with what I was thinking heading into this. So with all that said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content, click the like button to show me that you like the video, and consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing some more analysis of 2022 play-by-play data. If there's something in particular you're looking for or want me to check out, let me know that as well, and I'll keep that in mind for future videos. And that's where I'll leave things. I do have a league, Baseball Maelstrom. You can head over to baseballmaelstrom.com to follow that. It's using the Payoff Pitch Baseball game. If you're interested in that, you can also find videos on this very channel where I give recaps of games and stuff like that. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a great evening.